This is Unit 10, Lesson B. We're talking about zero, negative, and dividing exponents. First thing we're going to talk about is zero as an exponent. Anything to the zero power is 1. It doesn't matter what number you use, but if you raise it to the zero power, it will always equal 1. So that's why we've drawn you some examples here. 1 to the 0 power is 1, 5 to the 0 power is 1, 10 to the 0 power is 1, 100 to the 0 power is 1, 1 billion to the 0 power is 1. And as you can see, it affects negatives too. Negative 3 to the 0 is 1, negative 8 to the 0 is 1, and so on. And as you can see, we put in some ridiculous numbers because we wanted to show you no matter what the number is, if it's to the 0 power, it equals 1. So if we take a look at a problem like we saw yesterday, we know that when we're multiplying, we're going to go ahead and add the exponents. But what happens here is this is actually equal to the number 1. So the way this reads is y to the 3rd power times y to the 5th power times y to the 1st power and times 1. So if we went ahead and added those, it would be 3 plus 5 plus 1, which ends up being y to the 9th. Times that by 1, and you still get y to the 9th. So it doesn't really make a difference when you have a y to the 0 power. We just got to make sure you know that y to the 0 power equals 1. Next thing we're going to talk about is negatives as exponents. Negative exponents mean the exponent is supposed to be on the opposite side of the fraction. So what we see here is some examples. X to the negative number is actually 1 over x to the positive number. And you can kind of see that here in this example. X to the negative 5th is actually 1 over x to the positive 5th. So that negative tells me it should be in the bottom of the fraction. 1 over x to the negative number is actually x to the number on top. Now technically that's over 1. But remember, when something's on top of the fraction, we don't bother with the 1 underneath. Just like in this example. If I had 1 over y to the negative 3, that's actually y to the 3rd. And again, you could have it over 1, but we don't really have to waste our time with 1s on the bottom. So take a look here. Try and see what you think these two should actually be. Hopefully you said x to the positive 8th, but you put it over 1. So it's 1 over x to the positive 8th. This one shoves up, so it ends up being x to the positive 10th. And again, this one is going to shove down. So we're going to take a look at example 1. It's very similar to what we did yesterday, but it's going to have one extra step. Negative 5 times 4. Well, we know how to do this if it was written like this. That would give us negative 20. Well, just because there's variables and exponents doesn't mean it's not still negative 20. So we multiply those numbers and we end up with negative 20. Now I'm going to multiply my x squared to my x to the negative 3, which means I add those exponents. Negative 2 plus 3. That gives me x to the positive 1. Next, I'm going to go ahead and do my y to the 3rd times my y to the negative 10th. So that's going to be 3 plus negative 10, which is going to give me y to the negative 7. Now, what's new here, and what we haven't seen before, is we have a negative exponent. Well, that negative exponent has to be positive. All of your answers need to have positive exponents. So we're going to take this y to the negative 7th, and we're going to shove it underneath. And again, there's only a 1 under there. So what that ends up doing is the negative 20 stays the same. The x to the 1st power stays the same. But now I have that over y to the positive 7th power. This is your final answer. Notice we didn't take the negative 20 and put it on the bottom of the fraction. It's only when you have a negative exponent that it gets moved. Pause the video now as you try example 2. Press play to go over your answer. Make sure you're trying it on your own. That's how you learn. First the numbers, 3 times 2 is 6. Then the x's, x to the 6 times x to the negative 3rd is x to the positive 3rd. Now my y's, y to the negative 8th times y to the 5th is y to the negative 3rd. Again, we're adding those exponents. Then my z's. Z to the negative 4th times z to the 4th is z to the, well, negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So a couple changes. We know z to the 0 power is actually just 1. And we also know that this negative needs to be shoved below. Our final answer is 6x to the 3rd over y to the 3rd. Final answer. Go ahead and pause the video now as you try this clicker question. Press play to go over your answer. Negative 4 times positive 2 is negative 8, so I can get rid of a and d. X to the negative 2 times x to the 6 is x to the positive 4, so we're looking for a positive 4. Kind of have them here, but that one's on the bottom. Y to the 10th times y to the negative 4th is y to the 6th. And of course we have z to the 1st power times z to the negative 3rd, which is z to the negative 2nd. Now that's negative, so I've got to shove it to the bottom, which means B is going to be our answer. Next thing we're going to talk about is dividing exponents. When dividing the terms, subtract the exponents of like variables. Move variables with negative exponents so that all exponents are positive. So right now we're going to go ahead and talk about dividing the exponents by subtracting. When you multiply, you add. When you divide, you subtract. But we're also going to keep in mind that negative exponents have to be moved to the side that makes them positive. So we're going to take a look at example 3 first. I know they're dividing because of this fraction bar. So I always am going to take the top number, subtract the bottom exponent. What that ends up giving me is x to the 8th over 1, which is just x to the 8th. Final answer. Where this comes from is that if I had x to the 12th on top, and I also had x to the 4th on bottom, well, whatever's on top is on bottom, I can cancel. So each of those x's on bottom cancels with an x on top. And then I count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So because I have 8 x's left over, it's x to the 8th power. Pause the video now as you try example 4. Press play to go over your answer. First, because it's negative, it will stay negative. I can't divide 5 and 10, so I can simplify them by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. The next part is to take care of my x's. This x on the bottom has a power of 1. I always do the top minus the bottom. X squared is what I end up with on top. Your final answer simplified is negative x squared over 2. Final answer. Pause video now as you try example 5. Press play to go over your answer. Again, I can't divide my numbers nicely, so I go ahead and simplify them both by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Now I'm going to take care of my exponents. I always do the top minus the bottom number. 10 minus 4 is x to the 6th. So our final answer is 2x to the 6th over 3. Pause the video now as you try this clicker question. Press play to go over your answer. So we know it's got to be negative, so I get rid of a and c. I can't divide these nicely, so I simplify them by 3. 15 divided by 3 is 5. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So that eliminates D, making B our answer. Our last check, exponent is the top minus the bottom, which gives me 5. Pause video now as you try example 6. Press play to go over your answer. Dividing the numbers, we end up with 3. One way or the other, you should have gotten that 36 divided by 12 is 3. And if it helps, you can put it over 1. We're also going to do 18 minus 7, which gives me x to the 11th power. I'm then going to do 4 minus 10, which gives me y to the negative 6th power. But what I notice happens is my final answer cannot have any negatives. So I have to take my negative exponent and shove it to the bottom. That gives me a final answer of 3x to the 11th over y to the positive 6. When it gets shoved, it becomes positive. Pause the video now as you try example 7. Press play to go over your answer. I try and divide the numbers. I can't divide them nicely because the top is smaller. My numerator is smaller. So I divide them both by 3. That gives me an answer of 1 over 4 for my numbers. When I'm here, I do 2 minus 2, which gives me x to the 0 power. I then do 9 minus 12, which gives me y to the negative third power. To simplify everything, I take my negative exponent and I shove it. I know that my 0 exponent is just 1. So what I end up with is 1 on top over 4 y to the positive third. And here you have it, is your final answer for number 7. Pause the video now as you try this clicker question. Press play to go over your answer. I know it's got to be negative, so I get rid of that choice. My numbers, 18 divided by 6 is 3, the 1 on bottom. So I'm looking for a 3 on top, so that's what I have in all of those answers. 2 minus 2 is x to the 0 power. So I want an answer that doesn't have an x. So I can get rid of b. I then do y to the first power minus 9, which should give me y to the negative 8. So I should have a y on the bottom. Oh, a little mistake there. So this should be an 8 right here. And then, of course, once I get there, I'm going to go ahead and do 14 minus 4, and I should have z to the 10th power on top. So our closest best answer is C, but that exponent should be 8 instead of being 7. All right, we're going to take a look at number 8. Notice when we're simplifying here, 4 minus 8, or 4 divided by 8 is not nice, so I divided both by 4. I get 1 over 2. Then I take my top minus my bottom. Now, in this case, I've got to do some money math. Someone owes me $5. They borrow 2 more. They owe me negative $7. I then do my top minus my bottom, and I get y to the 8th power. My last step is to get rid of any negative exponents by shoving them to the opposite. So that gives me a final answer. Y to the 8th is still on top. 2x to the 7th is on bottom. Final answer. We're going to take a look at example 9. Pause the video now if you try it. Press play to go over your answer. 30 divided by 5 is 6. You can put it over 1 if you want. This has a 1 power. 1 minus the 2 on bottom is x to the negative 1. Negative 2 minus 8 is y to the negative 10th. And then I have 6 minus 6, which is z to the 0 power. We know that z to the 0 power is actually just 1. And we know our negative exponents get shoved to the other part. So 6 is still on top, times 1 is still 6. And we get our x to the positive first power and y to the positive 10th power. And here's your final answer for example 9. Pause the video now as you try this clicker question. Press play to go over your answer. I can't divide these nicely, so I simplify them by 3. I should have 3 over 2. So I get rid of a, and that's it. Then I do 5 minus 2, and I get x to the 3rd power on top. And then, so that means I can cross off b. And then I end up with negative 2 minus, this has a power of 1, so I should have y to the negative 3rd power. And then I have z to the negative 4th minus 6, which should be z to the negative 10th power. My last step is always to take my negative exponents and shove them to the part that will make them positive. So that's why I should have y to the 3rd on bottom, z to the 10th on bottom. So that gives me c as my final answer. But go ahead and bring this to the end of the video. If you have any questions, make sure you raise your hand and ask. Thanks.